Brian Flores' defense is really coming to its own, and it's time other teams start taking note. Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day, each and every day. I appreciate you all so very much. So thank you to my hashtag everydayers that are around every single day, first thing. And if you're new here, hello, and welcome to a 5-0 Vikings season. What a year we're having. You can find this show wherever you find your favorite podcasts, whether it is an audio listening app. You can just search out Locked On Vikings. You'll find the show up Monday through Friday in the morning. You can also find the show on YouTube or Amazon Fire and Roku if you download the Locked On Minnesota Sports app. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Today on the show, I want to focus a little bit on how the defense did what it did to the Jets, the role the Jets had in that, and just sort of take stock of where the Brian Flores defense has evolved into. And really the take here, teams are going to start copying stuff, and we're already starting to see it. This is no longer the Vikings' secret. And I think that is a testament to the defense that other teams are looking at it going, not thinking, oh, well, if I were playing that, I would just do this, this, and that, but rather going, oh, we should do that. Flores-y stuff is starting to leak. And that's going to mean that the shape of defense in the league is going to start being influenced by that. I also want to take a minute to just sort of revisit what I talked about yesterday with Sam Darnold in a more comprehensive way. I put up a Patreon video. You can find it at patreon.com/LukeBryanNFL. It's over an hour long. I went over like 25 of his dropbacks in this game, and we kind of address the questions of why it went poorly for Sam Darnold. Whose fault is it? What do we blame it on, and do we have to be concerned about those things moving forward, right? Whether it's the turf or did he just decide he's bad? Is it the knee? What's the deal? Anyways, Brian Flores' D had another one. They did the thing again, right? There's all kinds of gaudy stats coming out of this game. My favorite is 7 3-and-outs. And if you look at the 3 scoring drives, they were all either short fields or aided by a special teams gaffe. In the case, it was 2 short fields. The 2 of their scoring drives started on the wrong side of midfield. And then the one that started way deep needed that roughing into the kicker, or roughing the kicker penalty to keep going. Otherwise, Jets couldn't buy a yard. 7 3-and-outs. 7 3-and-outs. That is an obscene number when you only have 13 possessions and you were only able to generate a first down, not score, not get into Minnesota territory, generate a first down on 6 of them. It's crazy. And I think the key here is understanding where Brian Flores wants you to be. He blitzes a lot. We know that. If you think about Brian Flores' defense, you probably think blitz. If I were to ask you to explain to somebody who wasn't familiar with it what characterizes the Brian Flores defense, you would probably say, well, he blitzes a lot. And while that's not true, I want to encourage you to think about it one level deeper, which is why he blitzes a lot. It's not just to be aggressive and to try to get a lot of sacks. That'll happen. That's great when it happens. You can get an unblocked guy. Pressure makes, all kinds of problems on the offense. That's great. But what Brian Flores is really trying to do is to force the offense into its plan C. You think about being an offense, every offense has its blitz counters. Most play calls are going to have a blitz counter. There's some like 3rd and long stuff where it's like, well, a check down's not going to do anything. So if we blitz, if you blitz, you just get it. But most play calls are going to have some kind of blitz counter worked in, whether it's like a hot route or a check down or, hey, someone's showing blitz, let's put an extra protection. Most offenses have a whole bunch of tools to deal with, hey, we think extra guys are going to rush the quarterback. Quarterbacks have all sorts of tools to sort of restructure what's going on the offense to save it, right? And depending on the kind of offense that you are, your answers to that are going to take, I would say, one of 2 shapes. you're either going to try to get the ball out quicker or you're going to use more blockers. The beauty of the defense is that neither of those options are really built to be used at volume. When you're not facing a Brian Flores team, you're going to face a handful of blitzes. They're going to probably be deployed in strategic spots. And then for the most part, you're going to get a lot more 4-man rushes, maybe a lot of 5-man rushes if it's a particularly aggressive defense. But nobody blitzes like Flores, right? So for the most part, passing offenses, which is really what I'm talking about here, passing offenses are structured to go up against defenses that live in a 4-man rush and a 7-man coverage, whatever coverage that is, whatever shells they like. And then they figure, if you're going to send a blitz, we'll do this, and that'll get us out of that down, basically. You do it's 2nd and 7, you're going to send a blitz, we'll do a little check down, hope it gets 3, the hot route where we'll hope it gets 3 yards, or maybe if we see blitz, we'll check into a perimeter screen, and hopefully that'll get half of it, and if not, go explosive if it's perfectly blocked, and then we'll set up a 3rd and manageable. And it, like, a lot of offensive blitz counters are built to just live to fight another day and decide the game on a regular down. The thing about Flores is that he wants to blitz at volume. You can't run perimeter screens on 30 reps. You just can't live like that. You're not going to have an offense. I think so often, and I wish the Vikings had won this game so bad, about Monday Night Football last year, throwbacks game against Chicago, which Dobbs had 4 interceptions, that crazy, horrible one. And on the other side of the field, how Chicago couldn't get a touchdown. They could not score offensively. They could not move the ball. And they threw behind the line like 25 times. It was such a warped, broken version, resembling nothing close to what you would usually see from an NFL offense, even a fairly conservative NFL offense. I think about Bo Nix and the Denver Broncos, where they're running a lot of yards after the catch, a lot of short stuff, a lot of timing-based stuff, and they're getting a lot of heat for it. A lot of flack for, how many times today did Bo Nix throw beyond 10 yards? Oh, it was only 3, like all the time, right? But what if even 10 yards is too much to ask? It totally stunted that defense, or that offense. And then I think it was the next week was the Raiders game, which went very similarly, and they couldn't score a point at all. It was a shutout 3-0 game. I mean, come on. Those results were born out of offenses whose blitz counter is, well, we'll just throw something short and get out of it. And when you force a team to be living to fight another down every single down, they'll never pick a down to fight on. And they'll just sort of turtle their way into punting 400 times. That's a lot of what happened with the Jets because of who Aaron Rodgers is and how, being quick with the ball is a great way for him to neutralize pressure. Just get rid of it fast. Pressure can't do anything. Sending a lot of blitzes and forcing him into those hot read moments because you can't just sim it. He's too smart for that. You have to force it. You have to get an unblocked player, so he has to get rid of the ball. How many times in that game did Aaron Rodgers make a big, crazy play like we're used to him making? Versus how many times did he just flip it away to Garrett Wilson or to the running back or to a tight end to get tackled for 4 yards and live to fight another down all the way up until 4th down when they punted? That is exactly where Flores wants to bring you. And he wants to make you do those sort of suboptimal, but it survives kind of plays over and over and over and over and over again until you either have sustained a 16-play touchdown drive, which happens once every 4 or 5 games maybe, or until you screw one up, you get behind the chains, and you punt. That's been the philosophy. In terms of how that philosophy has been executed, especially against the Jets, we can get a little bit more into detail about this particular game next, plus a little bit more about the offense coming up too. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by the best way to play daily fantasy football. It is PrizePicks. PrizePicks has been my favorite way to have a little bit of extra fun while watching a game like Saints Chiefs that I don't care about at all, and getting in on it a little bit. And PrizePicks has some very, very strange more than less than amounts that are, I'm going to be honest, exploitable. There's just some stuff that's absolutely ridiculous. Plus a lot of promos and stuff that are also worth checking in on. So if you want to play daily fantasy, you got to do it at PrizePicks. For example, Justin Jefferson, if you think he'll get more than 83.5 receiving yards this week, you put him in your lineup. You think Saquon Barkley gets more than 67.5 rush yards, you put him in your lineup. You pick 2 to 6 like that, and then you can win up to 100 times your money. So download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. Moving on here with the Locked On Vikings podcast. Thank you so much for hanging out. When you're done here, go check out patreon.com/LukeBraunNFL. Watch some Sam Darnold stuff or some stuff from previous weeks. If you haven't signed up, or if you aren't going to actually become a patron, all of those are free to watch. So go check them out. So against the Jets, here's what really happened. That's the overall philosophy of the Flores defense. And as we are on the bye week, I might spend one of these shows doing another kind of here's the basic install of the Flores defense, kind of like I did last year, but things have changed, so it's worth revisiting. But let's hone in on this one game. Flores really sent it a lot. There have been games this year where he has simmed more than he has sent. And if you don't know, a sim pressure means you threaten blitz and you back off. But like the Andrew Van Ginkel pick six, that was one of the times that they simmed. And that I'm still astounded that Aaron Rodgers threw that ball. But it did indeed look to me like it didn't look to me like he didn't see Van Ginkel. He thought he could get it by him, and Van Ginkel was faster than he thought. But, so they were running a slant to Garrett Wilson with Byron Murphy humming down on it. Boy, was he drilling down on that thing. Brian Murphy really could have made a play on that ball. It would have been interesting to see what would have happened if Van Ginkel didn't back off right into its way and tip that thing up to himself and pick it. That got him good, and I don't think it should have. I think he should probably have understood you got to know where 43 is, which is what a great thing for this defense to be able to benefit from is now that this has happened twice in the first 5 weeks, not to mention pass breakups and a bunch of other plays have happened from Van Ginkel dropping into coverage. If you're a quarterback, like next week when you're Jared Goff preparing for the Vikings, you have to know where 43 is at all times. And you probably still have to know where 22 is at all times. You just got to pay way too much attention to both of those two guys. Meanwhile, you have all kinds of other players wreaking havoc everywhere. But those two particular guys seem to be the ones that are trixiest about the quarterback. Those are the guys that are doing the most subversive kind of sneaky stuff. And then you have guys like Grenard, who's playing it a little bit more straight up and just like beating guys. And so if you're talking about the pass rush, you have to know where 58 is because 58 is the focal point of the pass rush. He is the guy that they're trying to set up the most often. They're moving him around the formation. Sometimes they're using that as a decoy to set other people up. And it's not like you can forget about Patrick Jones, 91, or 0, Ivan Pace, or any of the other guys. And of course, where's Metellus lining up? That's another question. All of this confusion, and all of these good performances from all of these players make it so that you just kind of can't account for everybody. And it's meant that somebody's always been available to make a play. And what's really cool about this defensive output is that every week somebody's having a dang day. Whether it's, Kamu Grugier-Hill having a crazy day against the Texans, or Cam Bynum having a crazy day against the San Francisco 49ers, or Shaq Griffin having a crazy day against the Green Bay Packers. All of those players, every week it's somebody, and it's never just one guy. This week, the guy, Ivan Pace. Oh my freaking God, Ivan Pace took over this game at points. A lot of it just came from aggressive shooting of gaps. Ivan Pace is what we were all excited for Brian Oswald to be. Like, it truly is crazy how, second year Brian Asamoah, we were going, oh my God, this is the breakout, right? He looked like pretty fun his rookie year, and this is going to be the breakout. And he was basically anointed with a starting job that camp, and then Ivan Pace came on the scene and beat him. And what we were excited about with Asamoah was the way that he could shoot gaps and be really, really aggressive about like making plays in the run game at angles that offenses are willing to give you because you trust that the guy can't make the play. So when you design a run play, there are always going to be questions that you can't answer without saying, we just kind of hope he doesn't get there, especially from the backside of run plays. You say, yeah, we're not going to block the backside, outside linebacker. He's got to chase that thing down from all the way across the field. And you go, if we block this up perfectly and then that guy chases it down, then bless him. And so you call them bless him plays. Asamoah in college made a ton of those kind of bless him plays. It didn't show up this in the pros as much because he wasn't right about what gaps he was shooting. But when he shot him, he still clearly has that athleticism, and that's why I don't think it's wise to give up on him. It's just that there's not really a place for him anymore because Ivan Pace has just showed up and been that guy right out the gate. And in this one, there are a ton of plays where he shoots a gap or just dusts an offensive lineman, just destroys a guy that's supposed to have a blocking advantage against him and goes in and gets the tackle. There's like 5 or 6 of these on the tape. That's so many. Ivan Pace took over this game at points. I think Stephon Gilmore had a phenomenal day. I think Shaq Griffin had a phenomenal day. As good as the corners were playing on the other side of the field, on the other side of the ball, Vikings corners were doing great. It was really nice to see a much better game from Byron Murphy than he had versus the Packers. Down to down, he was a little bit more, a little bit stickier in his man coverage. He made those plays on the ball really well. I would much rather take this game from Byron Murphy than the Packers game where he plays pretty bad for the whole game and then has 2 turnovers at the end that are kind of, opportunistic. I would absolutely take the down-to-down consistency game. So very happy with that. Very happy with all the safeties. Metellus is still Metellus. Very rangy guy. Everybody had their day. The other guy that kind of had a low-key day that is a few of you even asked me about in the mailbag yesterday is Jerry Tillery. Jerry Tillery, he's only getting about 30 snaps a game. And I mean, look, he's the base pack. He's the Dean Lowry, right? He's coming off when we're doing nickel and stuff. But he and Bullard are coming off during nickel packages, and it's like a third edge rusher. A lot more Dallas Turner run in this one. And he had that great 4th down play as well. But they're using a lot of those edge rushers more. But when Jerry Tillery is on the field, it's super funny. Like, he's making these fantastic, like, 2-gap run play, run fit kind of plays. He's on the field only when there's like a bigger personnel package on the offense. So it's going to be a lot more run for him than it is going to be pass. And then Jonathan Bullard, whenever they do pass, he's the guy, he just sleds a guy back. There's no pass rush move to it ever. He's just moving a guy back and pushing the pocket, which, like, we'll take that all day. Happy with that. No notes from a D tackle, run stuffing D tackle type when they are going to pass out of those formations. So there's just so much to like from all the individual performances in that, like, they're really soundly and aggressively doing what they're supposed to do. And they're not trying to do so much that they give up other parts of the play. Like, there's this great awareness, but for a very veteran defense that is working on veteran savvy from guys like Gilmore and Harrison Smith and Harrison Phillips, guys that have been around the block for a long time. The shining star is the second-year player that wasn't even drafted. That's Ivan Pace. That's really cool to me. And I really just want to sit here and drone on about it forever, but I also do want to go back and revisit some of that Sam Darnold stuff. So that will be next. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And you can get a big return on FanDuel right now. You can bet live in the middle of a game, If the Vikings have a 17-0 lead, you think they're going to blow it or at least make it close, you can maybe get a live game spread on the other team. You can also go in and just grab them right now at plus 1,200 to win the Super Bowl, 12-1 odds. Put down $5 on that, and you can get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed, whether or not that bet wins. You get 200 back right away. That's 40-1 odds on whatever you want, and you don't even have to win it. You just get your money back. So you just get your $200 in bonus bets. So whether you want to take the Vikings as a home underdog next week against the Detroit Lions after the bye, or whether you want to go bet on something else to go keep that bye week interesting, you can find it all at FanDuel.com. Get those bonus bets with your first $5 bet at FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. Today's episode is also brought to you by Hillsdale College. Hillsdale College is offering a lot of online courses for free right now to Locked On listeners. Hillsdale is a Christian college that a lot of the courses they're offering are like stuff you would have studied in social studies, like history and stuff like that. And it's a Christian college, so a lot of it's like the Bible and ancient Christianity, and a lot of the courses follow that, as well as some of the more modern topics, but it is from that perspective. So if you are interested in that kind of thing, you can go to hillsdale.edu/lockedon to enroll. They have more than 40 free courses. If you go to that link, there's no cost. You can get started right away, and there's readings, quizzes, discussions, all of that stuff. If you are interested in that kind of content from that kind of perspective, and it's all self-paced. So you can take it as slow or as fast as you could ever want. Once again, that is at hillsdale.edu/lockedon. It is positively wild to me that Robert Saleh got fired after this game of all games. A lot of people have mentioned this, the prevailing narrative for the Jets. You should definitely go listen to Locked On Jets, by the way, is, wait, how is this going to fix the offense? And it's really hard to see a vision for how that fixes the offense, because what the Jets defense did was utterly incredible. I mentioned this a lot throughout the week on this show and on other shows that I go on, like Minnesota Football Party and Locked On NFL, but I have never seen a team defend Justin Jefferson like that. And it bears out statistically as well. The Jets used like 40 or 50% more cover one than any of the Vikings opponents so far, and way more than you're used to seeing against the Vikings in previous seasons as well, except for when they played the Jets. A couple of years ago in 2022, the Jets did the same thing. And Justin Jefferson was held pretty much in check in that game. He got like 42 yards. And in this one, he got 92 yards, which was a little better. He found a couple of chunk plays when they finally did go into zone coverage. A couple of plays on basics over the middle against quarters, which is a very staple thing for the Vikings to get production on. But offensively, the Vikings struggled here. And the reason I want to start by highlighting that is because I give a lot of credit to the Jets. And when we think about how concerned we are moving forward about other outputs like this, where the Vikings have, in terms of like EPA per dropback, I wrote an article last week that like examined a lot of these things. The Vikings were like top 5 in a bunch of categories, and they're like 15th now, just off of that one game. Just that game was so poor statistically, efficiency-wise, that it sunk them in a lot of those more stable categories. And when you watch the film for why that happened, you get a few things. For one, you have to acknowledge that the field was very slippery and that a lot of people on both sides were struggling to get traction. Both offenses struggled just as much. You had a lot of Jets falling over, slipping, trying to catch passes that they slipped past that are now behind them and failing to do so. Aaron Rodgers himself was slipping around. Defenders were slipping around. It was a difficult surface to run on. That's just how it is. That is an excuse that the Vikings themselves are not going to try to tell you. They've refused to do so when prompted with that. They say, we're not going to make that excuse. We made our mistakes. We got to get better. And that's great. That's exactly what they're supposed to say. But if we're trying to predict the future Vikings, that kind of situation is probably not going to happen again, because even if they do play outside on a rainy day, say in Seattle or something when they go there in December, they'll be more prepared for that because they will like know a little bit easier to expect that. And because they're not traveling internationally, it's a little bit easier to be more supplied on the road. So I'm not super concerned about that continuing on, but it absolutely had a massive impact on this game. And if you want to deny that because you're so afraid of excuse making, you're probably just denying yourself the full picture. Where that brings us with Darnold is, I think it contributed a lot to his inaccuracy. There are some plays where there's at least one where you can literally see his plant foot slipping out from under him and then the ball gets left short. And it's like, okay, he just could not get the drive. He couldn't get his cleats into the ground to generate the torque that he needs to generate to get that ball out. Just because his foot slipped out from under him, you lose a lot of power. And it had another mechanical impact as well that I talked about yesterday, and I will circle back to. But I would also be remiss if I didn't say there are a lot of plays where Justin Jefferson is just clamped. One-on-one, one single high safety, maybe you have his help, maybe you don't, and he is just Sauce Gardner in the pocket or DJ Reed in his pocket. I've never seen that. Not since Justin Jefferson's rookie year. And I have covered the Vikings professionally for the entirety of Justin Jefferson's pro career, and not since 2020 have I seen, when he hadn't really blossomed into the superstar that he is now. I have not seen a corner room, because it was truly an effort of all of them. The Vikings moved them around. Sometimes he was on Sauce. Sometimes he was on DJ Reed. Sometimes he was on Michael Carter. Sometimes he was on the backup guy that came in for Sauce when Sauce had that concussion thing. All of them did a phenomenal job. And you just have to say, okay, Justin Jefferson, you're 101 now. You were 100-0. Now you're 101. You took an L. And he knows that. He was very much acknowledged that after the game right away. He said he didn't play up to his own standards. But it was an L. That's not something that I thought anybody could do, but the Jets can. Luckily, I don't think a team that has fired its head coach has ever been to the Super Bowl. So barring that, I don't think we ever see the corner room again. Even if, seeing the Jets in a couple of years when they're on our 2026 schedule, they in all likelihood won't have DJ Reed. His contract is up at the end of the year. It'd be an interesting free agent target maybe. But they got the better of him, and they did it with strong physicality. And that came at the cost of a lot of flags. I'm reminded of the Lions game a couple of years ago when they used a ton of physicality. They actually did manage to prevent Justin Jefferson from getting open, but they took a penalty every single time, and the Vikings just kind of got free reign down the field. This happened a lot with the Jets with the in this game as well, where they used strong physicality. They jammed him, they hooked him, they tugged him, they did a lot, and they essentially just pushed the envelope as far as they could for what they could and couldn't get away with. It's a little bit of a Price is Right game, right? Closest without going over, and they busted a little bit sometimes. Not busted the coverage, busted in the Price is Right sense, in the blackjack sense. And that absolutely worked a whole bunch, but it did give up some free first downs. So I don't know if that was worth it, but if you want to stop Justin Jefferson and only stop Justin Jefferson, there are now two strategies that defenses know they can do to do that. I don't know if either of them win the game, but it'll get you good Justin Jefferson stats. You can either triple cover him, you can live in quarters all day, or quarter, half as it were, with the half side to Justin Jefferson, so you have help over the top on that side. You can have a press man corner underneath, or a press corner underneath him that doesn't have to worry about getting beat deep because he has half help. And then on the quarter side, you can have that other side safety poach anything that comes across. You can have three players with eyes on Justin Jefferson, and you leave everybody else one-on-one. You're going to lose the game to Jordan Addison, and Jalen Naylor, and now TJ Hawkinson, whose practice window is open and is hoping to come back for this Lions game in Week 7. You're going to lose the game to that, but you'll get good Justin Jefferson stats. That's one way to do it. The other way to do it is to mug him at the line of scrimmage and take a bunch of flags, but also you'll get good Justin Jefferson stats. You'll set him up with first and goal at the 2, but you'll get good Justin Jefferson stats. And they didn't even get good Justin Jefferson stats because they didn't do it every single rep. The second they let off, he gets a chunk. But what I think happened to Darnold here was related to the field. If I had to guess, and I'm super guessing, I'm not confident in this at all, but a lot of those passes that got left short, like that, the couple of wide open ones to Addison and Jefferson that they had to come back for that could have been touchdowns, or one to Addison that just straight up missed, that just one hop to him. When he tried to step into it, he wasn't transferring his whole weight into it like he normally does. His hips usually come through and end up nice and square. What you want, your hips will be basically perpendicular to your target when you start, right? Because you're standing to the side as you throw, and then as you come through, everything squares up to the target, and that's torque, right? That's your body releasing all that wind up and all that torque. You throw the ball. So when you throw the ball, your hips, your shoulders, and everything should be square to your target by the time you're done throwing the ball and the ball's in the air. Darnold's only got to about a 45-degree angle. Basically only got halfway the way to where they're supposed to be. And that means that he wasn't putting his whole weight into that. And if you look at the way his plant foot went down, I don't know if you've ever tried to do that on a slippery surface. I mean, we're all Minnesotans, right? We've all tried to walk on the lake. It was without like skates or boots on or anything like that. And it gets like on a parking lot. And if you put too much weight on that foot too fast, you slip like you stepped on a banana peel. So being a little ginger with that and not coming all the way through and then leaving those balls short, I don't know. It makes sense to me. It makes me think of walking in a frozen over parking lot in a winter day in Minnesota. So it makes sense to me. That's why it's my guess. Or I don't know. Or maybe he's turned into a pumpkin and he's going to be bad forever now. Who knows? But that's a lot of what I think happened there. I think the Vikings, and that wasn't the only problem Darnold had. You can go watch my Patreon video for a more comprehensive analysis. But I mean, he had some moments where I thought he either was too aggressive or the timing and rhythm was off, which could also be chalked up to the field surface, as you can't cut exactly the way you're supposed to. So it's either slower or you have to change it. So it's like weirdly fast. It just messes with the timing of things. So I think all of those are valid, or you could just say, hey, London, jet lag. But all of those are, I think, reasonable theories, and none of them repeat themselves going forward. So if this problem repeats itself moving forward, then we have to be concerned about, then we have to go back to the drawing board. Okay, what's really going on here? It wasn't the London stuff. So that's kind of the way we have to answer that question. But right now, all of my leading theories theoretically should dry up by the time you play the Lions. And if they have a bad game against the Lions, it's either probably for a different reason or I missed something. Whatever happens, let's hope we don't have to deal with it. But if we do, we'll do it then. I will see you all tomorrow. I don't know what we're going to talk about. We'll figure something out. But we're on the bye week now, so we're chilling a little bit, relaxing. And as always, Skull.